The one with the lesbian wedding is a really interesting episode of Friends because this narrative, the main storyline, could have lasted for a few episodes, and honestly, I wouldn't have minded if it did, but it also works as a self-contained story. This is the 11th episode of the second season of Friends, directed by Thomas Schlamme, and in this one, the main narrative involves Susan and Carol getting married. Monica is also catering that wedding, and we get to see a little bit of Ross's turmoil and confusion about what's going to be happening. I feel like they could have maybe dug a little bit deeper into how it was affecting Ross, but at the same time I realised that that would have made it less funny and more serious. Had it been over a couple of episodes, that might have worked, but I completely think the decision to kind of just brush on that and say, hey, if you're in a similar situation, it might affect you this way, and that's normal, was enough to kind of cover that within an episode. And of course, there are problems and pitfalls in the run up to the wedding. Everything happens really quickly. Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what the time span for this is, but it can't be very long because very early on in the episode, Phoebe announces that Mrs. Adelman, one of the clients who died on her massage table, had entered her body, and it seems like she has some unfinished business. And there's a wonderful exchange with Mrs. Adelman's husband that I just thought played out fabulously. But that Mrs. Adelman remains in her for pretty much all the episode. I won't say exactly what happens with that, but she couldn't have been there for that long. So this must have happened over a very short space of time. But I think the time frame develops really well. We have a nice mix of narratives. We also get a slight look at Joey's new career and how to smell the fart acting, which is one of the biggest takeaways from this episode, one of the things that I remember most, and I have to say it makes a lot of sense. I absolutely loved Mrs. Greene's praise of Rachel. When she comes to visit Rachel, she reacted in a way that I was not expecting. I mean, I've seen this episode many times now, but certainly I think I remember feeling that way, but even now when I watch it, I feel like they could have gone a different way and they could have made her mother much more snobbish, and we definitely kind of see that attitude with her. Well, I can't say what happens because it'll spoil it seasons down the line, but in later seasons. But here it was actually really surprising and really refreshing and definitely unexpected, and I really liked that. So I have to say it's a really, really good episode with a lot going on. It packs an awful lot in to a short space of time, but it doesn't feel rushed, nothing feels forced. And it was also nice to see Carol and Susan again, and Ben. Ben looked old. It's incredible to think how quickly the character grew up. But I rather enjoyed this episode, the one with the lesbian wedding, as is the case with pretty much every other Friends episode, is a really enjoyable episode.